Killing two birds with one stone at number 5 is both Kikinigashi Fucho and Lyrilusc assembled Nightingale. Two Wing Beast rank 1 Xyz monsters that both fill the same niche. Both require at least 2 level 1 monsters to make, but in the case of Assembled Nightingale, you can use more than 2 monsters. Fucho is unaffected by card effects while it's on the field, but can also make itself unable to be destroyed by battle, and prevent you from taking damage from battles involving Fucho if you detach 2 materials. Nightingale has a similar effect, which allows you to detach 1 material to make it so that all Lyrilusc monsters, including itself, cannot be destroyed by battle or card effects, and also you take no battle damage for the rest of the turn. Nightingale also gains 200 attack based on the number of materials it has, similar to Ensign Blue, and can also attack directly and multiple times based on the number of materials it has. So if you have 2 materials, Nightingale has 400 attack and can attack twice. Now at first glance, both of these protection effects appear really lackluster. They both help to stop you from being OTK, but they don't really do anything besides that, which is why for a long time, Fucho Nightingale never really saw any play. Fucho had nothing which would want to use it, and Nightingale was only ever used for gimmicky OTKs involving Psychic Blade. But with the release of Divine Arsenal AA Zeus, these protection effects suddenly became incredibly valuable. You see, Zeus is a really strong Xyz monster that's capable of wiping the entire field by detaching 2 materials. But to summon it, you either need 2 level 12 monsters, or you can instead overlay it on top of any Xyz monster you control, as long as an Xyz monster is battled this turn. This drastically increased the strength of an Xyz monster that could guarantee a battle will occur, as it meant that during the main phase 2, you could just put Zeus on top of it to clear away your opponent's field. In the case of Nightingale, its ability to attack directly likens it to Zodiac Borbo, which makes it so that you can guarantee Zeus by attacking your opponent directly without having to worry about attacking into monsters. And if your opponent tried to destroy Nightingale, or negate it with something like an Imperm, you can just chain Nightingale to apply its lingering effect, protecting it from destruction, allowing you to attack into your opponent's monster without Nightingale being destroyed, so that you can guarantee a battle and overlay into Zeus. Fucho, on the other hand, is always unaffected, so to guarantee an Xyz monster battles, you attack into your opponent's monster after detaching 2 materials to make it sure it can't be destroyed by battle. However, during the main phase 2, if you were just to overlay Zeus on top of Fucho, your Zeus would only have a single material, so you couldn't use his effect to wipe the board. But because Zeus's summon condition doesn't require the monster that battled to be used, you can overlay a Downerd Magician on top of Fucho, and then Zeus on top of Downerd, so that you have just enough materials to easily wipe the field. If it hadn't been for the release of Zeus, both Nightingale and Fucho would likely never have seen the light of day in competitive strategies. But because Zeus is just that strong, any card that can get you into Zeus is going to be incredibly powerful. This allowed for Nightingale and Fucho to see competitive play in a myriad of strategies, including the once dominant Drytron, solely because of how good they are as Zeus enablers. Slashing into number 4 is number F0 Utopic Draco Future, an incredibly generic Xyz boss monster and one that comes with some really powerful effects if you actually manage to summon it. But despite how generic it is, it's fairly difficult to bring out, because in order to bring it out, you either need to overlay 3 non-number Xyz monsters of the same rank, or more commonly, you can instead overlay it on top of Utopic Future, which only requires 2 non-number Xyz monsters of the same rank. So it's a lot of commitment to bring to the board, but well worth it, because while it's on the field, it can't be destroyed by battle or card effects, and whenever your opponent activates a monster effect, you can detach material from Utopic Draco Future to negate it. But that's not all, because if that monster is still in the field, you actually get to take control of it permanently. Now, despite being really generic with a decently strong effect, there are very few Xyz strategies that actually play Utopic Draco Future, because even when summoning it with Utopic Future, it requires a lot of investment. But there have still been a number of different strategies that can summon out Draco Future fairly easily. The Ghost Trick engine is a good example. As the release of Ghost Trick Shot, any way to reach a rank 1, 2, or 3 monster allows you easy access to Utopic Future to then go into Utopic Draco Future. This requires a fair amount of investment in your extra deck, but this engine can be splashed into numerous strategies that want to access the negate that Draco Future provides. However, other decks like Phantom Knights don't really need to rely on outside engines and can instead just use their native ability to spam rank 3 monsters onto the field, alongside free extenders like Levier the Sea Dragon, which can be used to bring back banished Phantom Knight monsters so you can overlay for the rank 3s to go into Utopic Draco Future. But by far, the best deck that could use Utopic Draco Future was Lyrilusc Tri-Brigade. You see, Lyrilusc Tri-Brigade was more than capable of spamming the board with tons of level 1 bodies, which they could use to go into rank 1s and would often overlay 2 copies of Recital and Starly for Utopic Future to then go into Utopic Draco Future so they got access to a free monster negate. In general, Draco Future is a really strong generic Xyz boss monster that can even be compared to the likes of Red Eye's Dark Dragoon, for how difficult it is to out. For the most part, however, it hasn't seen too much competitive play, but when it does appear, it's always an incredibly strong tool, whether it's Phantom Knights or Lyrilusc Tri-Brigade, since it's so easy to make. And speaking of Lyrilusc Tri-Brigade, stretching its wings at number 3 is Lyrilusc Recital Starling, one of the only cards in the game that's currently semi-limited. Recital has 3 effects. The first happens when it's summoned and lets you target a monster in the field to gain 300 attack and defense for each material attached to Recital Starling. So if you summon Recital with 2 monsters, that's a 600 boost to whatever you're targeting. Its third effect makes it so that any damage you take from battles involving an XC summon Recital Starling is also inflicted on your opponent. But for as cool as these two effects are, it's Recital's third effect that makes it so strong. As on a soft once per turn, you can detach one material to add any level 1 Winged Beast monster from your deck to your hand. This effect has a ton of applications because of the pool of level 1 Winged Beasts that are available in the game. Of course, Recital can be used to search out any Lyrilusc monster from your deck, and gives Lyrilusc specifically a huge boost to their consistency, but Recital can also be used as a generic interruption by itself, because one of the strongest and most applicable hand traps in the game just so happens to be the level 1 Winged Beast, DD Crow. DD Crow allows you to discard at quick effect speed to target a card in your opponent's graveyard and banish it, making it an amazing tool to interact with certain graveyard-reliant strategies. This is why Spiral decks played Recital Starling during the Tier 0 reign, as it was one of the only rank 1 engines in the game at the time that could be used to search out extra interaction, while also ensuring Quick Fix wasn't banished by its own effect. After Spiral was banned out of the format, however, very few successful strategies found themselves needing to use Recital, especially since there are so few good rank 1 strategies in the game. But that all changed with the subsequent release of Tri-Brigade alongside the latest support for Lyrilusc. You see, Tri-Brigade is a deck focused on using Beast, Beast Warrior, and Winged Beast monsters to either link summon a Tri-type monster, or special summon them from the extra deck by banishing Tri-type monsters from the graveyard equal to a Tri-type monster's link rating. And it just so happens that one of the main Tri-Brigade monsters is a level 1 Winged Beast with an incredible graveyard effect that can search off of Recital Starling in order to get your Tri-Brigade engine online. The only issue was that Tri-Brigade main deck monsters all had different levels, so you didn't have easy access to Recital. However, the main deck Lyrilusc monsters also happen to have a ton of synergy with Tri-Brigade. Turquoise Warbler and Sapphire Swallow and Cobalt Sparrow all interacted incredibly well with Nerval, and because they were all Winged Beast type monsters, they could be banished from the graveyard for the effects of the Tri-Brigade monsters, or use as link materials themselves, which made them especially potent by giving the deck easy access to Simorgh to summon out Barrier Statue of the Stormwinds from the deck. These factors made Lyrilusc one of the strongest supplementary engines that Tri-Brigade had access to, and as a result made Recital Starling a lot more easy to access and allowed you to search for a ton of beneficial cards in your deck, whether it's Nerval to get your Tri-Brigade engine started, or any of your Lyrilusc monsters, or even DD Crow as an extra interruption. What's even better is that Recital's effect is a soft once per turn. This led to Lyrilusc Tri-Brigade making multiple Recital Starlings per turn to search out even more cards from the deck, and from there they could either link off Recital Starling for a Tri-Brigade Link monster, or overlay them for Utopic Future, and then Utopic Draco Future. In terms of generic rank 1s, Recital is the best rank 1 in the game for its wide range of powerful searches that can either grab your engine pieces, or always interrupt your opponent, giving it an absurd amount of utility. But even for as strong as it is, the other 2 rank 1s on this list just do so much more to help out their particular archetype, such as the next card on this list. Shooting into number 2 is Drytron Mu Beta Fafnir, the only Drytron extra deck monster, but one with 3 absolutely absurd effects that boost the strength, consistency, and resiliency of Drytron by a lot. Fafnir is technically generic and can be made with any 2 level 1 monsters, but you're usually going to be making it with the level 1 Drytron monsters specifically because of its first effect. Because whenever you ritual summon a monster while you control Mu Beta Fafnir, you can detach materials from Fafnir to fulfill the requirements for a ritual summon. This is terrible if you're using it with most ritual spells, as level 1 monsters don't really help much when adding up to the levels for ritual summons. However, because Meteonis Drytron specifically tributes and summons based on attack value, this is really useful in Drytron for summoning out ritual monsters without giving up a ton of card advantage, since you can just detach the 2000 attack Drytron names from Fafnir instead of tributing bodies. And its other 2 effects also greatly benefited Drytron, as you could use as an end board piece to pair alongside your machine ritual monsters as a free spell negate, as well as a free consistency tool as it can foolish any Drytron card from your deck to the graveyard. One of the key reasons why Fafnir is so integral to the strategy is this foolish effect. Every Drytron card has an effect that allows it to special summon to the field if you tribute either a Drytron or ritual monster, and this effect can be activated from the hand or from the graveyard. This meant that you could use Fafnir as a way to gain easy access to important Drytron names that you couldn't reach otherwise. Drytron Alpha and Zeta were both integral to most Drytron combos, so you would use other Drytron bodies like Gamma and Delta to go into Mu Beta to gain access to them. But that's not all Fafnir can foolish, because it doesn't just allow you to access Drytron monsters, it also allows you easy access to Meteonis Drytron. By sending Meteonis, you could then use its graveyard effect to reduce the attack of Fafnir by 1000 to add it back to your hand, giving Drytron a third way to access its ritual spell alongside Diviner and Zeta. The best part is that Fafnir gets around the main downside of Meteonis, because usually losing 1000 attack on a Drytron name can make cards like Draconoid somewhat awkward to summon, but because Fafnir lets you use its Xyz materials as ritual summon fodder, its attack being lowered doesn't matter in the slightest. The consistency and strength that Fafnir gives Drytron is almost unmatched. But there is still one rank 1 in the game that happens to be way stronger. And counting this down to number 1 is number as 0 Utopic Zexal. one of the strongest number cards ever printed since it can stop your opponent from playing the game entirely. Because Utopic Zexal's effect literally stops your opponent from being able to activate any card or effect by detaching material during your opponent's turn, making it equivalent to 3 copies of Shockmaster. It also comes with a number of other bonus effects as well. Its XC summon can't be negated, so cards like Solemn Strike or Judgment can't be used to stop it, and your opponent can't activate any cards or effects in response to a summon, and it gains 1000 attack and defense for every material it has attached. Now, what holds Utopic Zexal back conceptually is that it's actually really difficult to summon because ways of bringing it out require investing a ton of resources. You can either special summon it out normally by overlaying 3 number Xyz monsters with the same rank, or you have to discard a rank up magic normal spell card to overlay Utopic Zexal on top of a Utopia monster you control. And both of these are actually restrictive summoning conditions, as you either have to be playing a deck that can make Utopia monsters that play rank up magic spells, or you have to spend a ton of resources summoning 3 number Xyz monsters. But during the time it was legal, it was possible to summon Utopic Zexal and lock your opponent out of the game completely by just using a single card. While Numeron is mostly known as a going second deck that can instantly OTK an opponent, there was a time when Numeron decks were actually more than capable of going first purely because of how easily they could summon out Utopic Zexal. Because Numeron Network summons out 4 Numeron gates with the effect of Numeron Calling, and these gates all just so happen to be number monsters, all of which were rank 1. So going second, you could just Numeron OTK your opponent with the gates. But going first, you could summon out the gates, overlay 3 of them for Utopic Zexal in defense mode, and stop your opponent from being able to use any cards or effects on their turn, basically locking them out of the game entirely. And because Utopic Zexal had 3 materials when you summoned it, and your opponent wouldn't be able to activate any cards or effects for 3 turns, essentially making it an even better True King of all Calamities, and one that was even easier to make too. And just like Calamities, Utopic Zexal soon found its way in the ban list for how easy it was to make, and for how easy it could just floodgate your opponent out of the game. It does have its issues when compared to cards like Calamities, since you could technically beat over Utopic Zexal, and trap cards could serve as an effective counter, but there is no doubt that in terms of rank 1s available to the game, Utopic Zexal is on a whole nother power level. And before we end this video, did you know that in the Pokemon TCG, they actually have quite a few floodgates that would put Yu-Gi-Oh! To shame? In fact, Pokemon seems to love floodgates throughout all of its history, having some Pokemon that prevent your opponent from using any of their item cards in hand, or just from using any of their monster effects. If you want to see what kind of floodgate effects they have over in Pokemon, maybe go check out the video right now.